Right, time now on France 24 to get a sense of what's going on in the world of business. Let's bring in Charles Pellegrin. Right, the big dominating issue at the moment seems to be European defence spending, especially with the unpredictability of the US right now. Major issue, and the EU mulling a new self-reliant strategy.
That's right. According to a new report by Bloomberg, the EU Commission is set to unveil a new paper in the next few weeks in which Brussels says it will aim to have as much as half of all its defense system purchases be within the EU by 2035. Currently, a majority of its military equipment is bought from third countries. Russia's invasion of Ukraine is what's behind this new strategy, obviously, as it laid bare the limitations of the EU's defense industry as it struggled to ramp up production capacity and spending after years of underinvestment. Here are some of the things we can expect from the new plan. Intra-EU trade within defense spending will represent as much as 50% by 2035, thanks in part to a minimum floor to procure defense equipment collaboratively within the EU bloc. A new board will be set up to monitor critical products and supply chains and ensure that the EU can quickly ramp up production in event of a crisis. And the new strategy also seeks to boost access to finance and funding programs, for instance, with tax breaks or using EU grants as collateral to issue bonds.
Sure, we've had quite an odd couple of months since the start of the year, since just before with the markets, these sort of peak rates that we're seeing, good times for investors, for stocks as well. What's happening today?
Today, let's see what's happening on the European markets. We're, going against what we've been seeing on the other global markets in the past 24 hours. The major European indices, as you can see, are starting the session, flat or even slightly higher after blockbuster earnings from the likes of NVIDIA last week. Investors are now keeping an eye on inflation data out of the U.S. Coming on Thursday and what that might mean for the Federal Reserve's thinking on interest rates. That's the big factor here. The FTSE in London up just over 0.06% as shop price inflation there in February fell to its lowest level in nearly 2 years. So a good sign for the Bank of England going forward. We're seeing also mixed trading in Asia, slightly warmer than expected Japanese inflation, putting investors on guard ahead of price data due in Europe and the U.S. You can see the Nikkei in Tokyo closing the session basically flat. The Nikkei there basically flat, and the Hang Seng and the Shanghai Composite leading the gains.
Now, all the naysayers saying that Bitcoin's dead. Oh, no, it isn't. They're bouncing back, and it's looking pretty good.
Bitcoin has soared to a more than 2-year high, above $57,000 for a token. That was helped along by software firm MicroStrategy Incorporated, saying it bought 3,000 more of the token. A sign, perhaps, that big investors are circling back towards the crypto asset after a period of regulatory uncertainty around crypto in general.
Now, Charles, I'm not sure if you're France 24's cigar connoisseur or whether you like a smoke, but let's go to Cuba because gloomy economy, yet tobacco sales are through the roof.
And this is happening as a week-long cigar festival kicked off there on Monday. The Cuban cigar, really an iconic object made famous by Fidel Castro, obviously. It's become a luxury product sold around the world, except in the U.S., where they're banned since the 1962 embargo. And last year, sales surged on a wave of post-COVID spending. Matthew-Mary Caruchet tells us more.
Connoisseurs from more than 100 countries have gathered in Havana to celebrate Cuba's most iconic product, cigars. It's been a banner year for tobacco exports, and the half-state-owned cigar manufacturer Habanos boasted big gains.
In 2023, we reached record revenues of 721 million, which represent a 31% growth compared to 2022 at constant exchange rates. That is an impressive growth.
Soaring sales came even as Cuban growers struggled to recover from Hurricane Ian in 2022, which flattened infrastructure and ravaged growing areas. Habanos attributed much of its gains to the growth of the luxury market after the end of the COVID pandemic. The market for limited edition and exclusive cigars is expanding in Asia and Europe, although Cuban exports have been banned in the United States since 1962.
La demanda ha aumentado exponencialmente.
Demand has increased exponentially. Obviously, we continue to have a shortage of products, but thanks to the efforts of Cuba, the supply has increased.
La oferta ha aumentado.
The increase in cigar exports represents a bright spot for the economy, as Cuba's gross domestic product retracted 2% last year. For years, Cubans have suffered falling wages, deteriorating public services, regular power outages, and a growing black market. According to the government, inflation reached 30% in 2023, cooling slightly from 38% the year prior.
Well, from Cuba to Australia, the government for the first time releasing official data, Charles, on gender pay gap in the private sector.
The new data is based off of close to 5,000 companies in the country with 100 employees or more, and found that male employees earn around 22% more than their female colleagues. And some high-profile corporations like Qantas Airways or Commonwealth Bank are showing pay gaps that are higher than the national average. Supermarket chain Woolworths, though, the nation's biggest employer, is at the other end of the scale. It has a gap of just 5.7%. So take a listen.
You know, there is a substantial problem in this country when you've got essentially 2/3 of businesses with a gender pay gap in favour of men. And we need to be honest about it. It's not about shaming, it's not about naming, it's not about saying men should be paid less. It's none of those things. It's about driving that change that we need to see in organisations to make sure that women are getting a fair crack at opportunity.
Interesting to see that data there.
Yeah, really 22%, quite a big difference. Still, Charles Belgrand, thank you. On our business desk.